Agriculture's Vicky Milria is available to discuss disaster recovery support with producers at Julia Creek today, Hewenden on Wednesday and Richmond on Thursday. Phone 0487 030 138 for details.
That was a news update on radio station 4LM, and I love the moment where the newsreader hears the dog, stops for a moment and thinks, no one heard that. And because the update was played at 6:30, 7:30 and 8:30, listeners were treated to that fun little moment 3 times. Hello, I'm television and radio presenter Rob McKnight. With over 3 decades of experience, this is Media McKnight. Well, are Kyle Sandilands and ARN close to doing a deal to put him back on the air? That is the sensational claim made by news.com.au, with a source apparently telling the outlet the parties are edging closer to a settlement that would result in Sandilands getting back on air just over a month after he was terminated from the network. As you can imagine, this report has sent the media into overdrive. But according to my sources, it's just, and I quote, wishful thinking. Insiders tell me as much as Kyle would love to work out a solution, as yet there is not one on the table that would see him return to work anytime soon. Sandilands is due back in court on Friday. Coincidentally, so is Jackie O. And the report says he would do the show with or without her, which I do believe to be true. In fact, I'd argue there's very little chance of a Kyle and Jackie O reunion, especially after everything that's come out. Kyle, I'm told, is really hurt over Jackie's claims and all trust is gone. And without trust, there's no way he can co-present a show with someone. So that just wouldn't be happening, even if she was open to the idea, which I don't believe she is. Meanwhile, with the pair due in court on Friday, I'll have a special edition of Media McKnight on Friday at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time to unpack everything that happened in court that day. Employment lawyer Michael Byrnes will join me for his take on the latest legal manoeuvres. It's sure to be an interesting one. Well, the battle between Channel 9 and former weather presenter Amber Sherlock does not look set to end anytime soon. Sherlock has lodged a claim in the Federal Circuit Court of Australia, claiming Nine sacked her because of her age and gender. It's a claim Nine denies. Insiders at Nine have been at pains to point out the role was truly made redundant, with at least 3 people now on rotation for the 6 p.m. Sydney news weather segment. They say they can no longer have someone just employed to read a 3-minute weather segment and not contribute to other roles. Those insiders also point out that Belinda Russell is just 1 year younger than Amber and is also a fill-in co-host for Today Extra, as well as a variety of other productions. This week on McKnight Tonight, I spoke with employment lawyer Michael Byrnes from Swaab. Despite all the noise around the case, including claims and counterclaims about how well-liked she was by staff members and, of course, the infamous Jacketgate video, he explained the core issue that will decide the outcome.
I don't think any of that is going to be all that relevant at the end of the day. And I'll tell you why, Rob. What this case comes down to is this. What was the reason for the termination of her employment? And Nine's case, fundamentally, the case theory is her employment was terminated for one reason and one reason only. It was a genuine redundancy. One of what I understand to be 50 redundancies that occurred at that time, and part of a broader cost savings program of $100 million, which of course is consistent with what is happening, and you know this better than I do, consistent with what is happening across the media landscape. Certainly. Redundancies all the time. And if you follow media publications, media podcasts and programs, you'll know a lot of time is devoted, sadly, to wave after wave after wave of redundancies.
Yeah.
And that is going to be Nine's case here. Nine are going to be arguing, its main argument is going to be, we terminated Ms. Sherlock on the basis of genuine redundancy, no other reason. Indeed, if you start opening up either conduct or performance, ironically, it actually weakens that position, because a redundancy is meant to be divorced from or separate to your conduct, your performance. Whether you're a superstar and the most popular person in the place, or whether you're a complete diva and the worst performing employee, and I'm not suggesting Miss Sherlock is either of those, particularly the latter, but it's just irrelevant.
We also spoke about the alleged promise made by news director Fiona Deer. Sherlock has claimed Deer told her over coffee, and I quote, "You'll be here forever. We'll wheel you and Pete Overton out of here." Now, Deer has denied saying that. Let's assume she did say it. Does it matter? Because the amount of promises I've been made over the years and haven't happened, I'll be ringing up John Laxon again and let's get ready to sue.
I'm sure John will be happy to hear from you. But I don't think it does, Rob, make much difference at all. Unless, and I haven't seen the full pleadings, but unless there's some sort of breach of representation aspect to the case, but I haven't heard that. So the fact that a couple of months before it was said that there was this statement made or representation made that you'll almost have a job for life, you know, that her and Pete Overton will be the people who almost got a job for life there. That to me is not relevant in what ultimately was the reason, or an examination of what ultimately was the reason for the termination of employment.
It's interesting, isn't it? I've got to say, judging by what I'm seeing, I'm not sure how Amber can win this case. She might be hoping for a settlement, but everything I'm hearing from Nine, they're going to dig their heels in and fight this. Maybe they'll settle? I don't think so, though. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Michael will be joining me for a special live edition of Media McKnight on Friday night at 6 p.m, that's Australian Eastern Standard Time, to unpack the Kyle and Jackie O court appearances, both on the same day. So make sure you go to youtube.com/@McKnight tonight to watch the live stream at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And on that note, Media McKnight and McKnight Tonight won't be on next week, but will return the following week. There's a certain entitlement the media has when it comes to doing their job. And if an organisation, like the police, don't play along, they get upset. Take this reporting by 9 News about the release of Ben Roberts-Smith.
Breaking cover, but immediately going to ground. Ben Roberts-Smith and his partner Sarah Matchelin arriving in Queensland this afternoon, their long drive from Sydney beginning last night, after his bail release, which is now under investigation. This was Ben Roberts-Smith stepping out of Silverwater. What should have been a routine release quickly turns into a covert operation. Standard procedure sees inmates at Silverwater picked up from this designated area. Roberts-Smith instead hidden from the media as correctional staff orchestrate a secretive escape from the spotlight. His extraction captured by our news helicopter. The former soldier in this silver Audi driven by his girlfriend. Corrective officers providing an escort, leading them out through a back exit, eventually onto a public road. A waiting photographer's car is obstructed, but determined to get his shot, he makes a run for the car that stopped at an intersection. One flash after another until Ben Roberts-Smith turns on a wry smile, giving a thumbs up. Running interference, 2 female officers try to shield the car. Their actions, among others, now under review.
I'm aware of the issue and Corrections is currently investigating, and once that's finalised, I'll have more to say on that.
Hours later, a statement including the arrangements in place were focused on reducing risk and ensuring everyone involved, including members of the public, remains safe.
They don't like it, do they? Listen to the language. Secretive escape. Back exit. Photographer is painted as the hero for getting out of the car and chasing for the shot. And 9 News are the heroes because their helicopter shots got around the police operation to hide Ben Roberts-Smith. Simple fact is, that looked like a media circus. And whether they did it so the guy has some dignity before he's gone to court and been found guilty of any crimes, they've given him the dignity as a high-profile prisoner of giving him a way out, avoiding the press. I don't think that's really a big deal. It's the media who are just like, how dare you? How dare you not parade him in front of us all? You know, well, they have the vegetables ready to throw at him next. They literally were trying to have him paraded down the street so they can get their shots. And when the police didn't capitulate, they put in protests leading to investigations, and they've turned the whole thing into a story of how the police did the wrong thing, but we got you the story anyway. I find it quite pathetic, actually. And, you know, the interesting thing about this is the media believes it should have unfettered access to people because they are just doing their job, but they don't like it when the tables are turned. See, according to the Daily Mail, there were panic stations at 9 after the outlet ran a gossip item about star newspaperman Nick Mackenzie's romantic history. Now, coincidentally, Mackenzie was the reporter who broke the original stories about allegations of war crimes by Ben Robert Smith. And it turns out the network apparently suggested to the Daily Mail that because of his high-profile investigative work, Mackenzie's relationship should be off limits. Now, the Daily Mail says it rejects the suggestion made to them that Mackenzie isn't a celebrity on par with Kyle Stefanovic, and therefore tattle about his personal life is not newsworthy. He's on the TV. Give me a break. You cannot shove cameras in front of people's faces unless you are willing to take it in return. One of the most hypocritical moments I ever saw on TV was when Ray Martin, the anchor of A Current Affair, really got upset when John Safran accosted him outside his home, something A Current Affair does every day. You cannot dish it out if you are not going to take it. Nick Mackenzie is on 60 Minutes, he's on TV, he's a high-profile person, and the way our society works, yes, his love life is up for grabs when it comes to reporting. Have you checked out the latest range of McKnight Tonight merch? You could look sexy in a t-shirt or even one of these caps. Or you could have a Rob's rant with me every day by getting your own mug. But maybe you're the kind of person who prefers a back-end quickie. Well, you can get them all and more at mcknighttonight.myshopify.com. That's mcknighttonight.myshopify.com. Get some merch, help us out, and you'll look good doing it.
Here comes McKnight Tonight.
Well, radio ratings for Mount Isa were released last week, 3 years after the last set of results. Spencer Howson, who was Brisbane's #1 breakfast announcer during his time at the ABC, is doing a PhD into the value of local radio to regional Australians and has been in Mount Isa for the past week interviewing people from the region about their listening habits. Spencer, welcome to McKnight Tonight. Oh, Media
Hello.
McKnight. Get my brands confused.
Look how light it still is up here in the northwest. This is why they don't want daylight saving. 8 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, and look at this.
Media McKnight's not live. You don't have to pretend. It's all right. Now, before we get to the results, tell me about the research you've been carrying out up there in Mount Isa.
Yeah, so it's a PhD project, as you said, and I'm in 5 different locations around Australia this year, looking at the value of local radio to regional Australians. And Mount Isa, the first of those locations, the radio ratings came out last week, and so it's not an accident that I'm in Mount Isa at the same time. I'm able to use the ratings data with the scientific sampling methodology of the research company. I'm able to use that. And also what I've found out and sort of match the two up. So I'm throughout the year where there are regional ratings in 5 locations, I'll be there roughly the same time so that I can sort of use their data. They're asking, who are you listening to? And I'm asking why.
Right. Now, let me ask you this, though. We get metro ratings constantly throughout the year. In the age of technology, why has it been 3 years since we last had results in this region?
It's a fair question, and money is going to be the answer to that. So it does cost money to go out and find your sample, and this is a very small region. There's less and less money in the radio industry, as you know, and so it's roughly 3 years. In actual fact, in some places where there's a conversion happening from AM to FM, they're allowing 4 years between surveys in some parts of Australia this year. But yeah, it's the way it is. You know, as a former radio presenter, I kind of like the idea of not having survey every 8 weeks.
See, I
and being able
don't.
to
I
just
want the data.
create radio.
I want to win.
Well, that's your TV background. You want sort of minute by minute, don't you?
Correct. All right, let's go through some of the results. Hit 102.5 remains the big winner on 48.6% share. Now, that's down 1.2%. 4LM is second on a healthy 18% share. Now, that is up a massive 11.5%. ABC Northwest Queensland is in third place on 14.7. Triple J is in fourth on 8.9. And Radio National rounds out the top 5 with a 1.4% share. We've seen some big growth from 4LM, Spencer, but is it even worth comparing results from 3 years ago?
Oh, it's all we've got. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all we've got, and these are numbers which the commercial industry then takes to advertisers, and that's the whole reason for the existence of ratings at the end of the day. That's the overall figure. That's your sort of Monday to Friday all people figure that shows hit dropping. If you look at the breakfast figure, which I'm particularly interested in.
Yes, I knew you would be. I've got those figures. Don't you worry, Spencer.
Oh, okay.
So let's take a look at those because in terms of rankings, it is a rinse and repeat with the hit team scoring a 49.6% share. But again, 4LM is on the rise by 12.9% to post a very strong 20%. ABC Northwest Queensland also does well on 16%. So, Spencer, the fascinating thing about these results, and I think this is what you are going to get to, is the fact the Hit Breakfast Show is actually broadcast from the Gold Coast.
Well, the first thing I was going to say is that the big three, Hit, ABC and 4LM, have all gone up in breakfast. In that overall figure that you showed first, Hit was down slightly, but at the all-important breakfast time, important not just because I'm a former breakfast presenter myself, but also it's the time of day when most people listen to radio. So it's where the money is made by the radio networks. But all three stations have gone up. And you might think, well, how is that possible? And in the radio rating system in the capital cities and in the regions, it's essentially only the stations that pay to be part of the survey that are included in the figures that are released. So community stations are not included. And if you have a look at last time, 3 years ago, if you add up all of those figures, there's actually a big gap. And I believe, although this information is not made public, I believe that Mob FM, which is a local community station here in Mount Isa, and Vision Christian Radio, which comes from the Gold Coast and broadcast nationally, I believe that a bunch of their listeners have moved over to 4LM, most likely, a little bit to the ABC, a little bit to Hit as well. So I think that's what's happened.
And why have they done that, Spencer?
So when the survey was conducted, which is in simple terms was in March, there was some severe weather in the north of Queensland. There's been flooding. There have been numerous sort of cyclone threats in the north. And certainly people I've been talking to in the industry believe that is a very possible reason that, so Mob FM is a music station. They're not doing a lot of content at breakfast time. They're playing a lot of music. And so at a time when you maybe want weather information critically, but you want a music station, but you don't want the pop music of Hit, then maybe naturally you would go and listen to 4LM. So I think that's probably what's happened here. But as you were saying, it's a big gap, 3 years, and also one of the things we like to say in radio, if things don't go our way, is it was a bad book, or in other words, the ratings diaries were dropped in the wrong part of town. That's the thing. So I know that some in the industry are saying, look, see, it is Mount Isa. There's a fly I've got to waft away. That it is only 3 years, and we can't get too excited. But really, was it a bad book last time, or is this a good book for 4LM, or is this actually an accurate representation of where those stations sit? But to your point, which you were getting at, which we have talked about previously, that #1 rating breakfast show on Hit, comes from the Gold Coast, so it's got 50% of the audience. 4LM, which has 20% of the audience at breakfast time. It is a local Mount Isa show, but it comes from Kingaroy, which is practically Brisbane when you're sitting here from this perspective. And then in third spot is the local ABC on 16%. By the way, sorry, my camera's wobbling because I'm literally sitting at a skate park, and I've got the kids sort of going past on their bikes and things. So.
Well, that's all right. But what does that say about live and local?
Well, for me, it suggests, and I have spent the last few days up here in Mount Isa interviewing people about why they listen to radio or why they don't listen to radio. And I guess what I've suspected, and it's been one of the drivers behind the PhD, is that maybe local is not what drives people to choose their radio station these days. If you want local information, you tend to go to Facebook. It was described to me by the ABC breakfast presenter up here, Zara Margolis, over a very nice blue steak and beer at one of the pubs, that this is a Facebook-heavy region. That even when she arrived here 11 years ago, everyone said to her, yeah, everything happens on Facebook. So if people are getting their local information from Facebook, and that's certainly what my survey reveals, when people want local news in Mount Isa, they go to social media. When they want to know what's happening around town, they go to social media. So what do people want at breakfast time? Probably just pop music in half of this
entertainment.
Town. Entertainment. Look, Bronte and Lakey do a fantastic show. They actually do a great show. They did a hilarious segment about Danny from Maps a couple of weeks ago. Danny, who kept saying, "You're not a mean, you're not a mean," and they did a really good stand-up where they kept saying, "Yeah, we know what you mean." And so it doesn't matter whether you're in the Gold Coast or in Mount Isa or Toowoomba or Townsville or Roma or Emerald or Hervey Bay, any of these places where that show is number one, that content is going to resonate, and then people can get their local from Facebook.
Well, it's interesting because you're heading to Mildura next, because the next survey there is coming out on May 27. And I was looking at the last survey from 2023, and again, an out-of-town breakfast show was also number one. I've got the figures here. That does not look like good news. Hit 99.5 Sunraysia, 34.8% share at breakfast. The show is not based in Mildura. Live and local, it does worry me.
So when that survey was done 3 years ago, that hit breakfast show came from Albury, which is on the Victorian border, but it's in New South Wales. In 2026, the hit breakfast show that you hear in Mildura, which is in northwestern Victoria, comes from Hobart. So on the 27th of, what date did you say it was? 27th of May. That's right. we will. That's a big week in the radio industry, because we've got the inaugural Australian Audio Awards the following night in Sydney, and I'll be there, and then I'll be going straight from there to Mildura to interview radio listeners and non-listeners. But if hit is number one, then you've got people listening to a show not only from another city, but from another state. The difference in Mildura, by the way, is they have a triple M. And one of the things that's come up here in talking to people is you've got hit, which is, pop music, like a B105, like a 2Day FM. You've got 4LM, which is a heritage brand, older skewing music station, and you've got ABC Local. And a lot of people at the weekend have said, this is a mining town. Look, there's which side is it? There's the chimney. there's the mine. And so there's a lot of young men in this town, not wanting to, gender stereotype, but it's true. And what if there was a triple M? Well, there is a triple M.
Interesting.
In Mildura, and it has a local breakfast show. So we'll find out in about a month's time what's happened in the 3 years since they were last surveyed.
All right, you'll have to come back and tell us about the audio awards and what's happening in Mildura. Spencer Howson, you are a friend of the show. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Rebel Wilson is in court this week, accused of defamation by actress Charlotte McInnes. The Federal Court of Australia is well funded and well resourced, but its audio-visual unit is a disgrace. It is about time they invested in proper gear and a proper team to showcase justice in action. And it's also time they allowed that vision to be used outside of court on TV news bulletins, on news websites and social media. Yes, we get the live stream, but there is no reason why we shouldn't be able to look back on open justice. Once the live stream's done, you are not allowed to record it, you are not allowed to clip it, you are not allowed to show it. One other complaint I have is the decision to stop the live stream because a witness didn't want to be seen. I believe Justice Elizabeth Reaper made a bad decision allowing that to happen. Now, during the Bruce Lehrman defamation action against Channel 10 and Lisa Wilkinson, Justice Michael Lee allowed the testimony of one witness to be exempt from the live stream. But because he believes in open justice, he decided a replay of that testimony had to be played out a short time later. Now, there are valid mental health reasons for stopping the live stream of a witness, but open justice means allowing the public to see that testimony. Concerningly, barristers were somewhat mocking of the live stream viewers in this court case, saying people can come to court if they want to see the testimony. While that's true, it's now 2026, and open justice is not limited to locations. In actual fact, witnesses are appearing from all over the world in this case. It's technology. Open justice means everyone, no matter where they are, should be allowed to see all the testimony in order to understand the final verdict.
You can show your support for the show by buying me a coffee. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/McKnight tonight. Every bit helps keep this show from our garage going.
Here comes McKnight tonight.
And now it's time for a salute and a slap. It's the segment where I praise someone but also pull them into line over something. Last week it was Kyle Stefanovic, and this week it's me. And for a very embarrassing reason. First, as always, the good. The McKnight Tonight YouTube page is really starting to find its audience. While we're not at the stats enjoyed by Carl, the growth has been consistent and organic. In the last 28 days, we've had almost 95,000 views and added over 450 subscribers. Now, that might not seem much compared to big media companies like 9, 7 and Sky, but you've got to remember there's been no marketing for this page. It's literally just people finding the content in their algorithm. And the YouTube algorithm is pretty hard to penetrate. And while we are monetizing, it's not a living wage yet. There is a long way to go. Over at TikTok, the numbers have been amazing, with some videos getting hundreds of thousands of views, but monetizing there is extremely hard, so it's not the main game for me. Now for the slap. Have a look at last week's segment and see if you can spot the issue. But now to the slap. And for that, we need to look at this interview he did with Treasurer Jim Chalmers recently on the Today Show. It was compelling. It was tense. It had everything. You couldn't look away. But there was one moment where Carl took it too far.
But on this day, we are getting the fuel into the country that we need.
Can you spot it? Well, as was rightly pointed out to me, that's not Jim Chalmers. It's Richard Marles. So how did this happen? I have absolutely no idea. I'm one guy in a garage. My wife switches it, but it was a brain fart that made it to the final product. And yeah, it's very embarrassing. So a salute for the work we're doing from our garage and the growth we're experiencing, but a slap and a big slap for getting a key detail wrong about a minister of the federal government. On this one, McKnight was wrong. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Media McKnight. We won't be here next week, but as I mentioned, there is a special live episode on Friday at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, where we'll be unpacking Carl and Jackie O in court. Both have hearings in their individual cases against ARN. Employment lawyer Michael Byrnes will be here to give his expert analysis. For more Media McKnight, just go to youtube.com/@McKnightTonight. I'm Rob McKnight. I hope to see you soon.